This is Sports Charlotte, the podcast about sports in Charlotte. My name is Herb White. I'm editor-in-chief at the Charlotte Post. And this is Cameron Williams, who is a staff reporter at the Post. And it is Thursday, April 24, 2025. It is draft day in the NFL. And the football-loving public is losing its collective mind over the next 3 days. Why? Couldn't tell you. But anyway, it's here, and we're going to talk about it.
Because the Panthers are going to finally get a player to turn the franchise around, right?
Is it 2011?
No, that didn't even happen then. But anyway, before we get on that tangent.
What's up?
A lot of stuff going on. We'll start with the draft. Because, after all, it is first round. It's tonight. 10 minutes a pick.
Yep.
I will tune in when the Panthers and the Cowboys pick. That's about it.
Okay, well, the Panthers, let's see, if you're talking about the opening of the program, which is going to take a good 5-10 minutes, then you talk about each team gets 10 minutes, 80 minutes, 90 minutes.
Well, they ain't picking until 9 o'clock.
I was going to say 9:30.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if everybody's using
the full
time.
Well, see, the thing is, Tennessee, everybody knows who they're picking. Why in the world would they take 10 minutes?
It's television.
Yeah,
You want the drama. You want to make the phone call to your pick. You want the world to bask in your moment of glory. Now, never mind.
Cam Ward is minus 20,000 to go number one. You need to, okay, as soon as Goodell says the 2025 NFL draft's underway, the Tennessee Titans thing on the side should say pick is in. Right then. Speed is along, people.
Oh, no. You're missing the bigger point. This is a made-for-television spectacle. TV has to sell it as that. It has to be a spectacle. It has to tell you all there is to know about every pick, especially the ones in the first round. And you go on and on from there, and you watch the families get all misty-eyed at this great occasion because it's life-changing. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not being cynical per se, but it is a life-changing experience for the young people who are going to hear their names called. And so can't be mad at them by any stretch of the imagination. But I would dare say if they were just at home and this wasn't on TV, they would be just as happy without the spectacle of it all. Because that's the bottom line. That's the basis for the whole thing.
Look at 2020. I mean, everybody was at home. Now, granted, Goodell still was in a studio of some sort, but the joy was still there. And so that, I'll give him a little leash. But Carolina Panthers pick 8th in the first round.
Yeah.
There won't be Cam Ward. There won't be Travis Hunter.
Nope.
Who are we going with? Or who are the Panthers going? I say we're the hometown team, but Abdul Carter's likely not going to be there. That was who they wanted forever, and then he just skyrocketed up the boards, even though he didn't work out at the combine.
Well, and he's coming off a bit of an injury, so in his best interest, you want to take it easy. You don't want to ruin things until there's a check in hand. So I understand that. I get that. And obviously it hasn't hurt him with the personnel people, with NFL teams. I look at the draft for need, and the Panthers still have a bunch. So to me, I don't even necessarily look at it as players. I look at it as needs. And so who's the best fit for that need at that pick? So if you're talking number 8, quarterback, at least that right now, is not a need. Running back is not a need. It's not as high a priority. The priorities are going to be anywhere on defense.
Edge or linebacker.
Yeah, and on offense, if you can get another receiver, that would be good. But is that as high a priority? And some people are even saying, well, maybe they'll go out and get a tackle. I'm not so sure if that is as high a priority as defense. And so the Panthers have been very intentional the last couple of years to go out and get that offensive help. I think they are on the right track with that. So I'm guessing they're going to go defense, and I would guess they're going to go rusher, pass rusher specifically. Although they could use some help everywhere.
Yeah. See, I love these ESPN analytic draft predictors or simulators because you select your team you want to draft and it goes through them. So Cam Ward went first, Travis Hunter went second, Abdul Carter third. No, I mean that's kind of a given at this point.
That's the consensus.
But Shadur Sanders actually went sixth according to the analytics, and Ashton Genty went seventh. I really want him if I'm a Cowboys fan, but I think we're going to make a trade if we want him because he is that kind of caliber good. But Jalen Walker, linebackers available. You got Mekhi Williams from Georgia as well, who's an edge. So there's going to be options on the defensive side available at 8. It's all about what the guy or what the people in the front office want.
Defensive tackle could be a possibility too.
Yeah, as far as best available, there's not many D tackles up on high on the list. There's a lot of edge rushers. Even James Pierce from Tennessee, formerly at UNC, before then at Chambers. So get a local guy. Who knows? Now I'll tell you what. If I'm Dallas and Genty's off the board, I'm taking James Pierce and running. That dude is going to be an NFL starter for a long time. I'm going ahead and doing that whole prognosticating. I'm so good at it.
Uh-huh.
But at any rate.
Go ahead.
As I was saying, I think you definitely need to address defense first. A lot of holes in the linebacker core. Obviously, when you got rid of Burns, you lose an edge rusher who made an impact for the New York Giants, even though the Giants weren't great. Nonetheless, I think that's where they start. Where do they go in the second round? Because once they pick 8, they don't pick again until pick 57.
Mm-hmm. And to me, that's where the draft really becomes a matter of who can stack the best prospects to create the best possible roster. For all the hype that the first round gets, that's just one person.
Mm-hmm.
Teams and rosters are built after the first round. So how Carolina navigates that with those remaining 8 picks, which is a pretty good number of folks that you have options with, that's where this team starts to build out. And whoever they don't take in that first round, those positions are going to be paramount, especially as you get further down the draft. So I think receivers going to get a look. I think that the secondary will certainly get one because they don't have a whole lot of bodies that have returned at this point. So those would be my next 2 spots if I'm thinking about it in terms of that draft. And
why don't you address D tackle here? Because based on, I know
analytics, free agency is out there too. With the people they picked up.
But according to analytics, and I get analytics aren't always true, but
true.
There's 3 possible D tackles that they project being around by Carolina's second round pick. T.J. Sanders, defensive tackle from South Carolina, Darius Alexander from Toledo, as well as Amar Norman Lott from Tennessee. I mean, you got 3 viable options there at the second pick. If you got your linebacker, the defensive line's a need too. Who knows? Could you fill out? I mean, there's even an edge rusher, Jordan Burch from Oregon. Now that guy, he was an animal.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of options, and there's also a couple of tight ends. And I know the Panthers don't necessarily need a running back right now, but they have Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State available.
Yeah,
that dude's nasty.
Yeah, but I guess you're going into training camp with at least 2 running backs with NFL experience, and depending on the health of the guy that you took last year, that may or may not even work out now because you're talking about somebody who's had 2 reconstructions within the space of a year. So that future isn't necessarily the most solid right now. And this class has really good running backs. Omarion Hampton from North Carolina, he's not going to be available in the second round. And the Panthers pick 57 if they don't trade.
Yeah.
So you can get good value there. But now the other side of it is they also need a tight end.
Yeah.
So
a couple here.
So they have that to consider. There's
Elijah Arroyo from Miami.
Yeah, there's way more need than they have picks, I guess, at this point. Well, and you might want to double down on a couple of those positions as well. Bring in two guys for positions. If you can get a couple of edge rushers, to start stockpiling for the future, that could be an idea. And the other thing too, I understand analytics and all the other stuff that goes into that. But sometimes you just have to go with, can this dude play?
Yeah.
And the one position that no one is really talking a whole bunch about with Carolina is O-line. Now, I know you've got your starting lineup pretty much set, but you can never have enough good offensive line depth.
That's true. But one thing I'll say that I know around this time last year when we were talking about the draft and what they needed to address in either the draft or free agency, they went and got some linemen to kind of help put a Band-Aid on that issue that was the size of a giant bullet hole. But they aided themselves in getting some guys that could help the offensive line. But as you mentioned, I don't think you could really ever have enough able bodies at that position. You can only play 5 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you need depth at that position because, Lord, as a Cowboys fan, I understand you have an offensive lineman go down and then you got a left guard who's never played center a day in his life fill in at center and then he can't snap the ball to the quarterback. But I digress. So let's go rapid fire here. We're going to do a little Charlotte Post Edition draft simulation. All right, if in the second round, would you take Elijah Arroyo, the tight end, T.J. Sanders, the defensive tackle, or Jordan Birch, the edge rusher from Oregon?
Defensive tackle.
Okay, E-tackle. Draft player. On to the third round, where they pick 74th. Okay, Amar Norman Lott, another defensive tackle, is actually available, as is Jordan Birch, an edge. Where are you going? There's also 2 running backs. Cam Scatterbo from Arizona State.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. If he's available, that could be an intriguing pick because this dude can do a little bit of everything. I like him. He can run between the tackles. He can get it outside. And Dan Morgan loves to talk about quote-unquote dogs.
Well, he's one of them.
Scatterbo is a dog.
So you're passing on Jordan Birch and Norman Lott for Scatterbo?
I'm just saying I'm intrigued by that possibility.
All right, I'm drafting Scatterbo. Down to the 4th round. So there's 40 picks in between the 3rd and the 4th round for the Panthers. Okay. You got some receivers, 2 running backs. We already filled that need. Safety, 2 safeties on here. Jonas Sanker from Virginia, as well as Billy Bowman Jr. from Oklahoma. But the receiver, Jalen Lane from Virginia Tech. What's the need here?
Safety.
Secondary?
Yeah, Oklahoma.
Billy Bowman.
Oklahoma.
All right. Quick turnaround. 3 picks later, thanks to my Cowboys making the worst trade ever for... Anyway. Still, Jalen Lane's available. Devin Neal, running back from Kansas. Demetrius Knight, South Carolina. Demetrius Knight used to play at UNC Charlotte. Linebacker. So, there's a couple more safeties on here. An edge. Tyrion Ingram Dawkins from Georgia. So, you're addressing edge, receiver, safety, linebacker. Where do you want to go here?
Let's see.
Jordan
already
James.
have one edge. Already have one edge, right?
No, you passed on Jordan Birch for Scatterbo.
Edge.
Okay. And then we've got 3 fifths and a 7th. So, here we go. Devin Neal's still available. Chamire Dyke from Florida, receiver. Here's an offensive tackle. Logan Brown from Kansas. Got a center and a guard. Jackson Slater from Sacramento State. As well as Miles Frazier, center and a guard from LSU.
Logan Brown.
Logan Brown, it is. Offensive tackle from Kansas.
Now, keep in mind, this is rapid fire. So
I know.
it's like-
I don't want to be on here all day, but just to give the podcast
and
fans.
we're having some fun here.
That's right.
Do not take this stuff seriously. Heaven knows I'm not.
Ooh, now this. I would be taking receiver here. You have Xavier Restrepo and Tez Johnson available at pick 146 in the 5th round. So the Miami leading receiver, or the Oregon leading receiver.
Tez Johnson.
Yeah, he was who I'd go with for sure. And 163rd in the 5th round. See, defensive tackle, linebacker, offensive tackle, center, and guard. Jackson Slater from Sacramento State is still on the board, but Carson Vinson, offensive tackle, Cody Simon, Ohio State's linebacker, and Jordan Phillips from Maryland, defensive tackle.
Cody Simon.
Linebacker it is. And the final pick, once this decides to load, in the 7th round. No 6th round pick for the Kitty Cats, eh? So 2 safeties, 2 receivers, linebackers. So Sebastian Castro, Iowa. Malik Verdon, Iowa State. Those are 2 safeties. Daquan Felton, receiver from Virginia Tech. Arian Smith, receiver from Georgia. And then Cody Lindenberg, linebacker from Minnesota.
Felton.
Daquan Felton, it is.
Yeah. Get Bryce Young some weapons out there. I know I didn't pick a tight end, but
So
I think you can make do with that if you get some playmakers on the outside.
the Panthers draft, based on the ESPN analytics and the Charlotte Post draftees or drafters, Jalen Walker, T.J. Sanders, Cam Scatabo, Billy Bowman Jr., Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, Logan Brown, Tez Johnson, Cody Simon, and Daquan Felton.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. No, I mean, I think it addresses, like you said, it addresses your top 2 needs on defense first. You get a kind of one of them wild card running backs that could end up being really good. I'm still interested to see if they go that option in the 3rd round, but you address immediate issues the next really 4 picks in safety, edge, offensive line, and receiver. And man, the 2 receivers that we picked, Tez Johnson and Daquan Felton, I like them. I like them a lot. Tez Johnson, I think he could be a day 1 starter. Which
Really?
Even as a 5th round pick, that dude, he just checks so many boxes, at least for me and what I'm looking for in a receiver. He's got some height, he's quick, decent route runner. I know all these people that do these grades at the combine and stuff, but I go a lot on eye test. And this dude could go out and catch a ball. I mean, that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. And keep in mind, the receiver that I would really want to have if I'm Carolina and he's available, obviously, you've got these priorities that you have to deal with. But my favorite receiver is Ted McMillan. And so, do you have somebody who is similar in terms of productivity? Because McMillan isn't necessarily the best route runner.
Mm-hmm.
He's certainly not the fastest guy, but he's got size and he knows how to go get a ball. So
that's true.
There you go.
That's true. And I mean, I'm just looking at some of the analytics on Tez Johnson based on the combine grades, and he's anywhere from a 6.4 to 7.4 generally on average out of an 8-point scale.
Mm-hmm.
If you got a guy that has fallen to the 5th round with that kind of grade, you take him.
Yeah, and keeping in mind, the draft is a crapshoot no matter what you do. So,
yeah,
does the reward outweigh the potential risk? So,
yeah, and I mean, his height is, it could be worrisome for some. I mean, he's not no Justin Jefferson who's standing there a giant amongst boys, but I mean, 5'10", 5'11". I mean, hey, one of the best Panthers receivers of all time was like 5'8".
Yeah, Steve Smith. Yeah, but he had
that dog.
That dog, and he had those intricate skills in terms of the route running, the speed, and just flat out attitude.
Yeah.
And receivers don't necessarily have that. They kind of have this stereotype of being selfish. Steve Smith would go out there and literally fight folk. So that's what you want.
Yeah, but man, I just a little on the slower-ish side. I mean, he ran a 4.5 40, so not blazing by any stretch of the means. 37-inch vertical jump. So I mean, if you're 5'11", you're not grabbing many jump balls.
Yeah, but you're also not competing against 6'2" corners for the most part.
Yeah, but I mean, he ran a 20-yard shuttle in 4.1. So look, if he's available in the 5th round, you take him. I would almost even gamble and take him in the 4th. But anyway.
Yeah, but the NFL teams, they value.
No.
So it's like.
Well, hey, if I'll tell you, if Dylan Gabriel's available, quarterback from Oregon, I'm by no stretch of the means an Oregon fan. I think they find a way to choke every year, as they did this past year with the number 1 seed. But they got some good players that flow through that program. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. And Dylan Gabriel, the Panthers don't really need a quarterback in the draft.
No.
Because they've got Andy Dalton, they've got Bryce Young, and they think that Young is on his way. And if he is, you don't want to do anything to mess that up.
Yeah.
And so throwing a third quarterback into that mix behind those experienced people, especially Andy Dalton, I don't know if that's really what you want. I mean, how much developing can you make with the quarterback that you take this year if you're the Panthers?
Yeah, that's true. So, all that to say, enjoy the draft. Because the Panthers, well, if they don't pick any of these guys, I'll be really sad. But they might not end up picking any of these players. It is a true crapshoot. But we get paid to prognosticate and do all this analytical breakdown and stuff. So hey, we'll do it.
We're just having some fun with it. Not that the Panthers or anybody else in the NFL are going to pay us any attention, but we have a platform to voice our opinions, and we're doing it. So there you go.
On to more football.
Yes, more football, because the seasons never end.
No. Football is back on University City Boulevard, as my lead read on my recap / takeaways / analytical, whatever you want to call this story, on the 49ers Spring Showcase. It was different, very different than Biff ran his a few seasons ago. Different. I mean, the first, 5, 6, 7 periods were kind of boring. A lot of warming up, a lot of stretching, a lot of individual drills. But then they broke out the team drills, and Grayson Loftus, your man, the guy that you think is going to be the starting quarterback, rolled out first, which was interesting to see, because I know I've been kind of big on Connor Harrell and thinking that he fits Albin's system a little bit better, but Grayson rolled out there first, Connor came in behind him, and then Zach Wilk. They all got similar snap numbers, so it's not like he was giving away anything. But naturally the reaction is people are going to be like, oh, he came out first, he's the starter.
Yeah.
Let's simmer down with the overreactions. It is April. But one of my takeaways was which of the quarterbacks looks ready to lead. Obviously, they had 2 really key departures last year, but Grayson Loftus really stood out through some really good passes. Connor Harrell seems to have a little bit of trouble with the deeper pass. Now, he's definitely the more mobile of the two. Grayson Loftus, I think, obviously they're in red no-contact jerseys, but he would have taken some sacks, I believe, if it was live game action. Harold knows how to roll out. He's really good with short, I'd say semi-intermediate throws, but he missed some of the long shots. There's no question about that. Running backs. I think the running back room is going to be just fine. Don Chaney Jr., a transfer who's had stops at places like Miami. Tough, hard-nosed, 220-pound running back who's going to run people over. But one thing that impressed me the most about him is usually guys at the running back position that are 220, 225, they lack the agility. His cuts were sharp. He really was shifty in between the tackles, which was nice to see. And then as well as Rod Gainey Jr., the stud freshman who committed on national television to Biff last year and all this stuff. Albin convinced him to come out of the portal So whatever message Alvin had for him clearly worked. Shifty, 180-pound back who's really he could burn you on the outside as well as the inside. And then the defensive line, I thought it was going to be a little sketchy, just knowing they've lost some players lately. It didn't look too bad. Plus, they got an addition on the defensive line that we'll get to shortly. So overall, I would assess the spring showcase as a solid B+. It's nothing that's going to dazzle, but it's something just to kind of get the fans excited. It served its purpose.
Mm-hmm. So now the rubber hits the road question. Understanding that the transfer portal giveth and taketh away even now, what should folks expect when they get together again in August? Considering the brutal schedule that they're playing, is it even feasible to think of this as anything other than a rebuild year, where you're going to have to expect to take some lumps and you're trying to build for something down the road, as opposed to give us our instant gratification?
That's a loaded question, because has Charlotte been in things that aren't considered rebuild seasons as of late?
Well, if you've had a coach around for 2 or 3 seasons, you shouldn't be rebuilding.
The last one to reach the 3 mark was Healy.
Well, but that's my point. So you would expect that there will be growth from year 1 to year 2. They didn't have that necessarily.
Won 2 more games.
Yeah, but you know those circumstances there.
That's why I thought my question when Biff was dismissed was appropriate to Athletics Director Mike Hill. What does growth look like at a program like Charlotte? Does growth look like going from 3 wins to 8? Or does growth
that's growth.
That's growth. I mean, that's going from 0 to hero. But my question to him was like, what are the boxes you want to see checked? Because they've won more games. I just don't know. I'm not a huge Biff proponent or lack thereof. I mean, a coach is a coach is a coach. But sometimes I think at a place like Charlotte, the leash is a little too short.
So you're saying that folks have too much instant gratification demand?
Well, say Alvin goes out there and wins 3 games, then 5 games. Is he getting the boot too?
Considering this is his first year, I say if he wins 5, you throw him a parade.
No. I'm saying if he wins 3 this year in his first year, similar to what Biff did.
Okay.
Then he goes out there and he wins 4 or 5 in the second year. Is he getting fired too?
No.
So what's the difference between the two? Other than Biff's a bit charismatic and boisterous mentality.
Yeah, he promised stuff that his team didn't deliver.
Wrote some checks he couldn't cash, even though he was loaded.
Yeah, on the football field, couldn't deliver. And so that set him up for a not so good result in terms of his employment status.
So are you saying that by Alvin's demeanor just being complete 180 of Biff Poggi's, was this going to buy him more time?
I think so. I mean,
that's interesting.
And given the schedule this year, if Charlotte plays up to or down to, depending on how you look at things, that schedule in terms of degree of difficulty, folks are going to give him a pass. Because it's like, okay, but we're coming off another coaching change. This is the schedule from Hades. You shouldn't have high expectations, especially given the resources at hand, namely NIL stuff. I'm not talking about facilities. I'm talking about paying people. They're not in that league just yet. So if it's an arms race about paying the best talent, never mind if the talent can't play. if you're paying folks to do this, then you should temper those expectations. And I'm just saying that Tim Alvin comes in and he's a bit more moderate in terms of the expectations that he's setting. And his public pronouncements. He's saying all the right things. He's doing all the coachees that he can muster to try to keep those expectations down. And folks will respond to that. So if they win 3-4 games, it's like, okay, well, yeah, we kind of expected that. Then you can turn the page and start adding pieces, hopefully, that will start to build on that. But I think folks are going to give him all the runway that he needs in year one, because that's only fair.
They didn't give, well, and again, it might be an attitude thing where Biff came in with all these promises, but they didn't give Biff a lot of leash.
Because Biff didn't give himself any.
Well, that's maybe also true.
Mm-hmm.
But one player is very excited to be joining the 49ers.
As well he should.
Taz Williams, defensive tackle, one of the needs that the 49ers had after losing a handful of players at that position. Comes to the 49ers after stops at Kent State and Utah State. He said he describes his game as, quote, nasty. He wants to get in there, put his hands on people, do the dirty work. It was funny, he even said, he's like, I grew up and he loved Lawrence Taylor. He wore 56 because that was who he modeled his game after. And he's like, I might do something after the play that the ref don't see, but that offensive lineman felt it. And things like that. That mindset of just being there and ready to put his stamp on a program that needs someone else, I would say. I mean, obviously they've had the Highsmiths and the Ogunjobis and stuff like that who've come through the program. It's time for the next one of those guys to come in there and say, look, put my stamp on this program. And he's like, he wants to be a leader. He's obviously been around the block a few times, been to various programs under various coaches. He's like, I'm here to set the tone. Like, I'm here, I can lead by example, by my work, by the way I put healthy stuff in my body as far as his nutrition, just different things like that he's looking to maybe shift the culture, get people doing the right things that will hopefully in turn result in more wins on the field. You read the story.
I did.
You edited the story.
I did.
What were some of your takeaways from the things old Taz had to say?
Well, I would look at it like this. All that's fine and dandy, but keep in mind he's a defensive tackle. Right?
Oh, here we go. That's in the story too.
Yes, indeed. So if you're not creating havoc, that's, if you are talking about leaving an impression on a program, do that. Create some havoc. And it's one thing to talk it up, and there's nothing wrong with setting those expectations, but you better be darn sure you're playing up to them.
Yeah.
So D tackles do not have the ball in their hands unless somebody's fumbled or they manage to snag an interception. That's few and far between. You have to be a disruptive force on that defense in order to really make a difference. And he has an opportunity because, like you said, they've lost a bunch of people from that unit. And if he can come in, get into the starting lineup, stay healthy, and be a true home record at that position, okay, I can get into that. But again, the other side of that is you've got your opportunities because that schedule is no joke. If you want to prove yourself, you're going to have your chances.
True. What speaks volumes to me is just, okay, for those who don't know, this guy reached out to me, and he reached out to other media in the Charlotte area. Like, he's excited. Not often do people come to Charlotte and they're just like so gung-ho. And I mean, it's terrible to say because after all, it is my alma mater, but people come to Charlotte, they're like, it's a backup option. And it's a fallback to it's like, okay,
It's the side piece.
I didn't make it. at this place. I'm gonna come here. Nah, he's like genuinely excited. He's like the conversations he had with the coaching staff were very genuine. Alvin shook his hand, looked at him in the eye, face to face, talked to him like a man, and he said he can appreciate that. And he said while Charlotte hasn't had a history of success in football, the coaches that they've got in place now do. And I think that is big time because people, the diehard fans don't forget, but some of the casuals forget. Biff Posey had never coached at the head coaching level in college football.
At any level of college football.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So he says he thinks the staff that they have in place now is ready to kind of change that culture and change that, I guess, narrative behind Charlotte that that's the school that people go to play because they weren't playing at their previous school. So it's good to see people actually be excited to join the football team at Charlotte because prior it was just kind of a fallback option.
Yeah, and you kind of get that feeling that with Tim Alvin as the head coach, that he wants to put in place something where Charlotte becomes more of a destination. Now, because you play the AC, you will not get that type of kid for the most part, at least on the front end, recruiting him in it, that maybe at SEC or Big 12 or the ACC might get. But you can be best of show.
Yeah.
And if you can put in enough players like this young man, then you can build a culture that says, well, you know what? You don't have to go to the big brand schools to make an impact and to get
the
noticed.
NFL.
Yeah. I mean, because, if nothing else, this is the same school that produced, 3 NFL players?
Well, more.
4?
I mean, more than that, but 3.
They're talking about who on the rosters and make an impact.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
3.
Nate Davis, Ogunjobi, Highsmith.
Yeah.
So, and the program is young. I mean, it's fresh out of the box, and you've already had that kind of success. Now, granted, it was a while back with a totally different coach.
The first coach.
Yeah, who had a totally different mindset. But then again, Alvin does have some of that Brad Lambert kind of, it's low key, not necessarily going to make your head spin with pronouncements, anything like that. It's very down to earth. And so from that standpoint, he might be onto something. And if he can get something going in that first season, it doesn't have to be a winning campaign, but just something that gives folks hope. And I think any fan base, that's what you want. You want at least some hope before you can get to those higher expectations.
It is kind of interesting that you talk about characteristics of the coaches this program's had. And I mean, while Lambert wasn't loud and boisterous and stuff like that, Alvin does seem to have very similar, maybe a similar demeanor is the right word. And then you had Healy, who young, energetic, charismatic, and then you had Biff, who obviously
Biff?
Again, maybe not the young part, but still energetic, had the charismatic qualities, and just very out there and loud and boisterous just about the team. I wonder if it was strategic in the hiring process to find someone a little bit more scaled back. So, like your point, 4 wins might not seem as, 3 or 4 wins might not seem as bad as it would under Healy or Biff, because they're always out there, they're loud, and they're in the media and things like that. So, who knows? I'm sure Mike Hill and Sharon Gaber know what the strategy was there, but I mean, Alvin checks all the boxes from a metrics and numbers side of things. So, long time till August, but it will be here before we know it.
Just get it right.
Yeah.
Just get it right.
I'm not going down that rabbit hole.
But at any rate, we're all set now. We are footballed out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can't wait till 7 o'clock. Or is it 8 o'clock?
8 o'clock.
Ugh.
So
Panthers aren't drafting until 10.
So it might be midnight before this thing is a wrap. But nonetheless, we'll be back with the next podcast that will certainly provide an
We might as well go tomorrow. Talk about who they picked. That's for us to decide.
Yeah, that's might be an idea. We'll see. We'll see about that.
But before we go, what are we looking forward to outside of the draft?
Charlotte FC,
I think you're
number
going
one in the MLS Eastern Division with 19 points, unbeaten, untied at home, and they're playing at Bank of America Stadium Saturday. That is something worth looking at. And I would encourage anybody who wants to see what a winning product in Charlotte looks like, go check those dudes out.
Well, I'm going to put my nose up because what I was looking forward to was also on the soccer front, not MLS.
Uh-huh.
La Liga, although this is the Spanish Copa del Rey final, it's a La Liga matchup. Barcelona and Real Madrid. El Clasico. Saturday at 4. Barcelona's been really good all season. They are still in the Champions League. They play Inter Milan. They'll play Inter Milan in the semifinals. Real Madrid was just they just got the big boot by, I believe it was Arsenal. So Real Madrid, they're gonna want to win this game against their rival. I know Herb calls me the soccer snob because this is good soccer here.
I'm not saying it isn't,
but I think it'll be a very good game to wager some coin on. Take Barcelona money line. The over under 3.5 goals. That is steep. Give me the under.
Okay. All right. So there you go. Now, you know how this works. We appreciate you being here, spending some time with us. Now, go to our website, thecharlottepost.com. Become a donor or a subscriber to the publication. And subscribe to our sports newsletter. It comes out once a week. And we recap and look forward to all the stuff that we're doing around here locally, whatever the sport may be. So do that. We appreciate it. And for everybody at the Charlotte Post here in beautiful Derrida, I'm Herb.
I'm Cam.
Thanks for watching and listening.